Hello and welcome back to our shared space. Wherever you are in the world right now, be it the quiet hush of dawn in Tokyo, the bustling twilight of New York, or perhaps somewhere in between. Tonight, we embark on a journey designed to gently uplift your spirit and soothe your mind, inviting a profound sense of calm that can lead to the deepest sleep you've experienced in years. Just imagine for a moment shedding the invisible cloak of worries. You might be carrying the quiet hum of anxiety that sometimes buzzes in the background of our busy lives. Did you know that a simple story, a teaching from ancient wisdom, can begin to unravel that tightness in just a few minutes, shifting your entire perspective? In our fast paced world, it's easy to get caught in a relentless cycle of tasks, notifications, and endless to do lists. We often find ourselves adrift on a sea of obligations, tossed by the waves of stress and the undercurrents of negativity. You're not alone if you've felt the weight of these unseen burdens, the quiet hum of anxiety, the subtle tension that settles in your shoulders, or the racing thoughts that keep you from truly resting. These are the modern day dragons we face, not with swords and shields, but with the quiet power of our minds and the timeless wisdom of those who walked before us. Many of us grapple with a persistent sense of unease, a feeling that we're constantly striving but rarely arriving at a state of genuine peace. It's a struggle that silently depletes our energy, dims our outlook, and crucially disrupts the natural rhythm of our sleep. The very air we breathe seems charged with a constant demand for our attention, pulling us in 1,000 different directions. We scroll, we tap, we consume, but rarely do we truly digest. This ceaseless input can leave us feeling overstimulated, mentally fatigued, and strangely disconnected, even as we're supposedly more connected than ever. It's like trying to drink from a fire hose when all you need is a gentle sip of water. This incessant noise, both external and internal, makes it incredibly difficult to find that quiet space within us, the space where true rest and renewal reside. It's in this space that Zen stories and Buddhist teachings truly shine, acting as a balm for the overstimulated mind. They offer not a quick fix, but a gentle redirection, a subtle shift in perspective that allows us to approach our challenges with greater ease and our rest with deeper surrender. They are like quiet anchors in a stormy sea, reminding us of the stillness beneath the surface. Think of those moments when a simple phrase or a poignant observation suddenly reframes everything you thought you knew. That's the essence of what we'll explore tonight. These aren't just quaint tales from a faraway land. They are practical tools for navigating the complexities of modern life. They invite us to look beyond the superficial, to question our assumptions, and to find liberation in letting go of what no longer serves us. The goal isn't to escape reality, but to engage with it more fully, more consciously, and with a greater sense of inner peace. And in doing so, we often find that the very act of engaging deeply with these stories begins to quiet the mind, preparing it for the profound rest it craves. It's a journey not just into ancient wisdom, but into the depths of your own awareness. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. Your support helps this quiet corner of the internet continue to grow, reaching more people who might benefit from these moments of reflection. And as you settle in, perhaps share where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always a wonderful reminder of the shared journey we're on across continents and time zones, all seeking a little more tranquility in our lives. Now let us begin tonight's journey together. You remember how we talked about those unseen burdens, the quiet hum of anxiety that sometimes buzzes in the background? Well, imagine for a moment a small, secluded Zen garden tucked away from the clamor of the world. In this garden, a wise old willow tree stands, its branches gracefully sweeping towards the ground, as if bowing in eternal meditation. Its leaves of vibrant green rustle softly in the gentle breeze, each whisper a tiny fleeting sound born and then gone. One crisp morning, a young monk, barely out of his novice robes, sat beneath this very willow. His name was Kenji, and he was troubled. His mind, usually a placid pond, was a tempest of thoughts. Worries about his meditation practice, concerns about his meager chores, and even a fleeting irritation at a particularly loud cicada outside his window. He tried to focus on his breath as his master had taught him, but each inhale seemed to pull in another worry. Each exhale released only frustration. He felt as if his mind were a tangled ball of yarn, impossible to unwind. His master, an old man with eyes that held the quiet wisdom of 1,000 sunsets, approached him silently. He sat beside Kenji, not speaking, but simply observing the young monk's agitated state and the rustling leaves of the willow. Kenji, feeling the master's presence, sighed deeply. "Master," he began, his voice a whisper. "My mind is restless. It churns with thoughts like a mill wheel spinning endlessly. I try to quiet it, but the more I try, the louder the clamor becomes." The master smiled, a gentle knowing smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. He picked up a fallen willow leaf, perfectly formed and still vibrant. He held it out to Kenji. "Look at this leaf, Kenji," he said, his voice soft as the breeze. "It is born, it grows, it dances in the wind, and then in its time it falls. Each moment of its existence is fleeting, yet it resists nothing. It simply is." Kenji looked at the leaf, then back at his master, confusion clouding his young face. "But what does a leaf have to do with my restless mind, master?" The master chuckled softly. "Your thoughts, Kenji, are like the leaves of this willow tree. They are born, they flutter, they pass. Some are vibrant and pleasant, like new spring leaves. Some are dry and brittle, like those of autumn. Some are even bothersome, like the cicada you just cursed in your mind." Kenji blushed. "But you, Kenji, are not the leaves. You are the tree itself, and the tree does not try to stop the leaves from appearing, nor does it cling to them when they fall. It simply observes, standing rooted, experiencing the breeze, and the stillness, the growth, and the letting go." He continued, his gaze drifting to the rustling branches. "When you try to suppress your thoughts, you are like a child trying to catch every falling leaf. You exhaust yourself, and then still more leaves appear. Instead, simply observe them. Acknowledge their presence, but do not grasp them. Do not judge them. Let them flutter, and let them pass just as the leaves on the willow do." Kenji sat there, watching the willow leaves, listening to their soft whispers. He started to notice how each leaf, distinct in its shape and movement, was still part of the whole. He began to see his thoughts not as enemies to be vanquished, but as transient phenomena arising and dissolving. He imagined his mind as the vast open sky, and his thoughts as clouds drifting across it. Some clouds were dark and stormy, others bright and fluffy, but none of them remained forever. The sky itself remained vast and unchanging. This simple analogy, the whispers of the willow tree, began to shift something within Kenji. He realized that his struggle wasn't with the thoughts themselves, but with his resistance to them. His anxiety wasn't born from the thoughts, but from his desperate attempts to control them, to make them disappear. When he stopped fighting, when he simply observed, a subtle space began to open up. The agitated tempest in his mind didn't vanish instantly, but its intensity began to lessen. The waters of his mind, though still rippled, were no longer churning. This is a profound teaching that resonates deeply with our modern struggles. We are constantly told to think positive or to get rid of negative thoughts. But Zen teaches us a different approach, non-resistance. Instead of fighting against the thoughts, we learn to acknowledge them, to see them for what they are, fleeting mental events, and then to gently let them go. Just as the willow tree doesn't fret over every leaf, we don't need to engage with every thought. We can observe, breathe, and allow them to pass, creating a spaciousness in our minds. This practice of observing thoughts without judgment is a cornerstone of mindfulness. It allows us to step back from the incessant commentary of our minds and find a deeper sense of presence. When we cease to identify so strongly with every thought that arises, we create a distance, a space for peace. This distance allows us to distinguish between the thought itself and our reaction to it. It's in this space that we find the potential for true calm and ultimately for deeper rest. When the mind is no longer constantly battling itself, it naturally settles like stirred water when the stirring hand is withdrawn. So as you continue this journey with us, think of Kenji and the willow tree. When your mind feels restless, when thoughts swirl like autumn leaves in a gust of wind, don't try to catch them all. Don't chase them and don't push them away. Simply observe them, acknowledge their presence, and then let them drift by. Allow yourself to be the silent, rooted observer, and know that, like the willow, you too can find profound stillness amidst the endless dance of life. We've just explored the gentle wisdom of the willow, reminding us that our thoughts, much like leaves, are transient. Now let's delve deeper into the wisdom of non-attachment, a concept that might seem paradoxical at first glance, but which holds the key to incredible freedom. It brings to mind the story of the monk and his empty bowl, a tale that beautifully illustrates how letting go creates space for true fulfillment, not by gaining more, but by needing less. In a small, unassuming monastery, nestled in the mountains, lived a Zen master known for his profound simplicity. He owned very little, his worldly possessions amounting to a humble robe, a well-worn meditation cushion, and a single wooden begging bowl. This bowl was his constant companion, carried with him on his daily rounds to the nearby village where he would receive alms from the villagers. One sweltering afternoon, after a particularly long and arduous walk back to the monastery, the master sat down to meditate. As he closed his eyes, a young earnest novice named Haruki approached him. Haruki had been observing the master for weeks, fascinated by his serene demeanor and the apparent lack of concern for material possessions. Haruki himself, fresh from a life of comfort and abundance, found the monastic life challenging, especially the concept of owning so little. He often found himself secretly longing for the small luxuries he had left behind. Master Haruki began, his voice hesitant. "I have a question that troubles my mind. You possess only this one bowl, yet you seem utterly content. How can this be? My family home is filled with beautiful objects, fine silks, and delicious foods. Yet I often felt a deep dissatisfaction, a constant yearning for something more. Here with nothing you radiate peace. The master opened his eyes, his gaze clear and steady. He held up his wooden begging bowl. Haruki, he said, his voice, quiet but resonant. Tell me, what is the purpose of this bowl? Haruki thought for a moment. To receive food, master, to sustain you. Precisely, the master replied. It serves its purpose. Now tell me, what if I were to fill this bowl to the very brim with gold coins? Haruki's eyes widened slightly. Then, master, it would be very valuable. You would be wealthy. The master nodded. And what if instead of gold, I filled it with precious jewels, sparkling and rare? Even more valuable, Haruki exclaimed. You could buy anything you desired. The master then gently turned the bowl upside down, emptying it of the imaginary gold and jewels. He held it out to Haruki, who looked at it now undeniably empty. Now Haruki the master asked if this bowl were full of gold or jewels, could it still fulfill its true purpose? Haruki paused, considering. No, master, he finally admitted. If it were full of gold, it could not receive food. Its purpose would be lost. Exactly, the master said, a soft smile playing on his lips. Its value as a container, its ability to serve its function, comes not from what it holds, but from its emptiness. It is only when the bowl is empty that it is truly ready to receive. If it were always full, it would be useless, no matter how precious its contents. He lowered the bowl. Our minds, Haruki, are much like this begging bowl. We spend our lives trying to fill them with desires, with possessions, with achievements, with opinions, with even our own anxieties and attachments. We believe that if we just acquire enough, if we just hold on to enough, we will find contentment. But like the bowl, when our minds are constantly full, there is no space left, no space to receive new wisdom, no space to experience true peace, no space to simply be. Our attachment to what we already hold, whether it's a cherished possession, an old grievance, a fixed idea, or even a fear of what we might lose, prevents us from receiving the nourishment of the present moment. The master looked kindly at Haruki. The true wealth, my young friend, is not in having a full bowl, but in having an empty one ready to receive whatever life offers, without clinging to it once it has served its purpose. When we are not attached to things or even to outcomes, we become truly free. We can appreciate what we have in the moment and then release it without pain when its time has come. Haruki looked at the empty bowl, then at the master, a new understanding dawning in his eyes. He realized that his constant yearning for more was precisely what kept him from appreciating what he already had. His dissatisfaction wasn't about lacking things. It was about his clinging to the idea that more things would bring him happiness. The master's simple empty bowl, far from representing poverty, was a symbol of boundless possibility and true freedom. This story, the monk's empty bowl, is a powerful metaphor for our lives. In an age of consumption, where we are relentlessly encouraged to acquire more, to hold on to more, and to strive for more, this Zen teaching reminds us of the profound liberation that comes from non-attachment. It's not about giving up everything you own, but about releasing your clinging to those things. It's about recognizing that true fulfillment doesn't come from accumulating, but from the spaciousness that arises when we let go. Think about how this applies to your own life, especially as you prepare for rest. Are you holding on to worries from the day? Are you clinging to expectations about tomorrow? Are you replaying conversations or holding on to grievances? These are like the gold and jewels in Haruki's bowl, valuable in their own way, perhaps, but if they fill your mind, there's no space left for peace, no room for the deep, restorative sleep you truly need. By understanding the wisdom of the empty bowl, we can begin to consciously release these mental burdens. We can acknowledge them, perhaps even appreciate the lessons they might offer, but then we allow them to pass, creating the necessary space for calm. When your mind is empty of clutter, it becomes a vessel ready to receive peace, tranquility, and ultimately the deepest, most rejuvenating sleep. It's a practice of subtle surrender, a gentle emptying that allows the true essence of rest to flow in. We've learned from the monk's empty bowl how crucial it is to release our grip on what we cling to. Now let's expand on that spaciousness by understanding that we are never truly alone, even in our quietest moments. This brings us to the profound idea of the unseen thread of connection, where we discover the intricate interconnectedness of all things, and how compassion can transform our entire perspective, weaving us into the larger tapestry of existence. Imagine, if you will, a vast ancient forest, not just any forest, but one where every tree, every blade of grass, every tiny insect, and every hidden stream is subtly linked. There are no isolated entities here. Everything breathes and thrives as part of a grand living network. In the heart of this forest lived a solitary woodcutter named Hero. Hero was a gruff man hardened by years of labor. He kept to himself, believing that self-reliance was the only true virtue. He chopped wood, carried it to the village, sold it, and returned to his lonely cabin, rarely exchanging more than a few words with anyone. His world was small, self-contained, and often quite heavy. He carried the weight of his own existence, his own struggles, as if he were the only one facing them. One harsh winter, a terrible blizzard swept through the region, trapping Hero in his cabin for days. When the snow finally cleared, he found his woodpile buried and the path to the village impassable. His meager food supplies began to dwindle. As the days stretched on, hunger gnawed at him, and a cold, unfamiliar fear began to creep into his heart. He who had always prided himself on his independence found himself utterly helpless. Just as despair began to settle in, there was a tentative knock at his door. Hero, surprised, opened it to find his elderly neighbor, old Kiko, standing there shivering, but holding a small, steaming pot of miso soup. Kiko lived even more remotely than Hero, and Hero had rarely given her a second thought. Hero-san, Kiko said, her voice thin but kind. "I noticed your chimney hasn't smoked for days. I feared you might be in need. This is all I could spare." Hero, initially stunned, felt a warmth spread through him that had nothing to do with the soup. He took the pot, muttering thanks, and shared the meal with Kiko. As they ate, Kiko spoke of the hardships the blizzard had brought to everyone, how villagers were helping each other clear paths, share what little food they had, and mend broken fences. She spoke not of grand gestures, but of small acts of kindness, like a child sharing a piece of bread or a young man clearing a widow's doorstep. As Kiko eventually left, Hero sat by his hearth, the warmth of the soup spreading through him, but even more the warmth of her unexpected compassion. He realized something profound. Kiko hadn't waited for him to ask for help. She had simply seen a need and responded. Her act was not about her gaining anything, but about her inherent understanding of connection. The next day, despite his weakness, Hiro took his shovel and began to clear the path, not just to his own cabin, but towards Kiko's and then further towards the village. He found others already at work, and without a word he joined them. He felt the ache in his muscles, but this time it was different. It wasn't the lonely ache of his own burden, but a shared effort, a rhythmic movement alongside others. He saw how each person's small effort, like a single thread, contributed to the larger fabric of their community. He noticed the old carpenter, whose leg was still recovering from an injury, directing the younger men. He saw children carrying small bundles of kindling to neighbors. He observed a quiet understanding passing between people, a silent agreement to help to support, to ensure no one was left behind. It was as if an invisible thread connected each person, pulling them together in a moment of shared vulnerability and collective strength. Hiro realized that his rigid belief in self-reliance had been a form of isolation, a self-imposed prison. He hadn't been strong, he had simply been alone. True strength, he now understood, lay not in standing apart, but in recognizing and nurturing the unseen thread of connection that binds us all. When he offered his strength to others, he didn't lose anything. Rather, he gained a sense of belonging, a lightness of being that he had never known. His previous burdens, though still present, seemed less heavy because they were no longer his alone. This tale, The Woodcutter and the Blizzard, beautifully illustrates the Buddhist teaching of interdependence. We often operate under the illusion of being separate, autonomous islands. But in reality, every action, every thought, every feeling reverberates throughout the vast network of existence. Your joy can inspire another. Your compassion can alleviate suffering, not just for the recipient, but also for yourself. When we extend kindness, when we offer help, we are not just helping another. We are strengthening the very fabric of our shared humanity. This understanding of connection is incredibly liberating. It reminds us that even when we feel alone or when we are struggling with our own thoughts and anxieties, we are part of something much larger. Just as Kiko's act of compassion transformed Hiro's fear into connection, our own small acts of kindness, whether to ourselves or to others, can transform our inner landscape. It helps us shed the heavy cloak of self-concern and embrace a broader, more expansive view of our place in the world. As you prepare for sleep, consider this unseen thread. If you're feeling lonely, remember you are connected. If you're carrying a heavy burden, realize that others have walked similar paths, and that reaching out or simply remembering our shared human experience can lighten the load. Cultivating compassion, even for ourselves, softens the edges of our worries and invites a sense of unity. It's like unwinding the tight knots in our minds, one gentle thread at a time, allowing for more harmonious flow and ultimately a deeper, more peaceful surrender into rest. We've opened ourselves to the unseen thread of connection, understanding that true strength often lies in unity. Now let's consider another fundamental truth, beautifully articulated in Zen, the impermanence of emotions. Just as a river flows continuously, never holding onto the same water, our feelings are constantly moving, arising, and passing. This section explores how to observe them without judgment, allowing them to flow rather than becoming trapped in their currents. There once lived a young fisherman named Hiroshi who spent his days by a wide, meandering river. Hiroshi was a skilled fisherman, but he was also deeply sensitive to the river's moods. When the river was calm and glassy, he felt peaceful and joyful, and his nets would fill with fish. But when storms raged and the river became a churning torrent, Hiroshi would become anxious and fearful. He would curse the heavens, fret over his empty nets, and often retreat to his small hut, consumed by his dark mood long after the storm had passed. He believed his happiness was entirely dependent on the river's temperament, and he clung desperately to the calm days, fearing the turbulent ones. One day, an old Zen master, known for his wisdom and tranquil spirit, came to fish by the same river. He sat quietly, his simple bamboo rod cast into the water, seemingly unfazed by the changing weather. Hiroshi's watched him fascinated. One afternoon, a sudden fierce storm blew in. The sky darkened, thunder cracked, and the river rose and raged, tearing at its banks. Hiroshi, as usual, began to panic. He frantically pulled in his nets, cursing the storm, his face a mask of distress. The master, however, remained calm. He slowly reeled in his line, sheltered himself beneath a large rock, and simply watched the storm, his expression serene. When the rain finally subsided, and the river, though still swollen and muddy, began to calm, the master looked at Hiroshi, who was still trembling. Hiroshi, the master said gently, "You fight the river's nature." But Master Hiroshi exclaimed, agitated, "It is a cruel river. It gives abundantly one day and steals everything the next. How can one find peace when its moods are so violent?" The master smiled a soft, knowing smile. The river, Hiroshi, is simply being the river. It flows. Sometimes it is placid, sometimes it rushes, sometimes it overflows its banks. But it is always the river. Its nature is movement, change, or impermanence. He pointed to the receding waters. Your feelings, Hiroshi, are like the waters of this river. Joy flows in sadness, flows in anger, fear, peace, they all flow through you. You are not these feelings, just as the riverbed is not the water. You are the riverbed itself, the constant presence through which all these waters pass. When you cling to joy, you suffer when it recedes, just as you suffer when the calm river turns wild. When you fight against sadness or fear, you create a deeper eddy, a whirlpool that traps you. Instead, observe your feelings as you observe the river. Acknowledge the storm, feel its force, but know that it will pass. Do not jump into the current and try to stop it, for you will only be swept away. Simply watch it flow. The master continued, when the river is raging, you don't try to make it calm by shouting at it. You don't try to hold on to a single drop of water. You adapt. You wait. You understand its nature. In the same way, when a strong emotion arises, be it fear, anger, or even intense happiness, do not try to cling to it or push it away. Simply observe it. Feel its presence in your body, acknowledge its energy, and then allow it to flow through you. Do not judge it as good or bad. It simply is. Hiroshi stood there listening intently. He had always tried to control his emotions, to force himself to be happy, or to violently push away his fear. He realized now how exhausting that battle had been. He thought of all the times he had replayed past hurts, or worried endlessly about future misfortunes, holding on to those feelings as if they were solid objects. He saw that by doing so, he was building dams in his mind, preventing the natural flow. As the sun began to break through the clouds, casting a golden light on the still moving river, Hiroshi felt a subtle shift within him. He watched a particularly turbulent eddy slowly smooth out. He realized that the impermanence of the river was not a curse, but a blessing. If the river stayed forever calm, it would stagnate. Its changes brought life vitality and renewal. In the same way, the changing nature of his emotions, though sometimes uncomfortable, was part of being alive. This teaching the river's flow and the mind's current is incredibly liberating, especially in a world that often tells us to suppress or chase feelings. It reminds us that emotions are not permanent states, but dynamic energies, always in motion. When we learn to observe them without judgment, we reclaim our power. We are no longer victims of our moods. We become the conscious observers of them. This is the essence of mindfulness. As you prepare for sleep, think of the river. If anxiety washes over you, or if a wave of sadness appears, acknowledge it. Say to yourself, "Ah, here is anxiety," or "Here is sadness." Feel where it manifests in your body. But then gently remind yourself that it is a current, not a solid rock. It will pass. Do not cling to it, and do not try to push it away. Simply allow it to flow. This practice creates a gentle detachment, a spaciousness in your mind that frees you from emotional entanglement, guiding you towards a state of deep, undisturbed rest. By allowing emotions to flow, you clear the path for a truly peaceful night. We've learned to observe our emotions like the flowing river, allowing them to pass without getting swept away. Now let's turn our attention to the profound depths that can be found not in what we say or do, but in what we don't. This brings us to the taste of silence, exploring the profound peace found in quiet introspection and the practice of deep listening to the world around us, and more importantly, to the quiet wisdom within. In a remote mountain temple, far from the nearest village, lived a Zen master whose reputation for wisdom drew seekers from all corners of the land. Yet unlike other masters who might deliver grand sermons, this master rarely spoke. He spent his days in quiet meditation, tending to the temple garden, or simply sitting in silent contemplation. Visitors would arrive eager for profound teachings, only to be met with his gentle silence. Many found this frustrating. They had traveled great distances for words of wisdom. One blustery autumn morning, a particularly impatient and ambitious young scholar, Ren, arrived at the temple. Ren had read countless scrolls, debated with renowned philosophers, and prided himself on his eloquence. He felt that knowledge was acquired through vigorous discourse and logical argument. He approached the master, bowed deeply, and then launched into a rapid-fire series of questions about the nature of enlightenment, the meaning of suffering, and the path to ultimate truth. He spoke for what seemed like an hour, barely pausing for breath, convinced he was demonstrating his intellectual prowess. The master listened patiently, his eyes half closed, a faint, almost imperceptible smile on his lips. When Ren finally exhausted himself, his voice hoarse, he looked expectantly at the mauve, awaiting a brilliant, eloquent answer. But the master said nothing. He simply looked at Ren, then slowly poured 2 cups of tea. He offered one to Ren and held the other himself. He then took a deliberate slow sip of his tea, enjoying the warmth and the subtle aroma. Ren, bewildered, took a sip of his own tea, waiting for the master to begin his discourse, but still only silence. The only sounds were the soft rustle of dry leaves outside, the distant call of a mountain bird, and the gentle sipping of tea. Ren, initially agitated, began to feel the silence press in on him. It was an unfamiliar sensation, a quiet he hadn't experienced in years, accustomed as he was to constant mental chatter and the clamor of city life. He tried to think of more questions, but his mind, perhaps tired from its recent exertion, felt strangely empty. As the minutes stretched into what felt like an eternity, something began to shift within Ren. He noticed the warmth of the teacup in his hands, the faint scent of the tea, the cool air on his face, the subtle creak of the wooden floorboards beneath him. He noticed his own breath, deep and rhythmic. He began to hear the intricate layers of the natural world outside, the wind sighing through the pines, the drip of water from the eaves, the almost imperceptible hum of his own heartbeat. He realized with a sudden jolt that in his incessant questioning and talking, he had never truly listened. He had been so busy projecting his own thoughts and seeking answers outside himself that he had completely missed the richness of the present moment, the quiet wisdom that lay hidden in the very silence he had initially resisted. Finally, the master placed his empty cup down. "Ren," he said, his voice quiet but clear, "what was the taste of the tea?" Ren, still somewhat dazed by his experience, replied, "It was warm, master, and refreshing. Subtle yet distinct." The master nodded. "And if your mouth had been full of questions, could you have truly tasted it?" Ren looked at the master, a deep blush spreading across his face. "No, master," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "I would have missed it entirely." "Precisely," the master said. "The deepest truths are not always spoken. They are often found in the spaces between the words, in the moments of stillness, in the profound act of listening, not just with your ears, but with your entire being. When your mind is full of noise, you cannot taste the subtle flavor of existence. When you are constantly seeking, you cannot find what is already here." This powerful lesson, the taste of silence, reminds us that peace isn't something we find or acquire through external means. It's often revealed when we quiet the incessant noise of our own minds and truly listen. In our modern world, we are constantly bombarded with information distractions and the pressure to produce, to respond, to be on. This leaves very little room for silence and even less for deep listening. But it's in these moments of quiet introspection that profound insights often arise. It's when we stop filling every moment with activity or noise that we can truly hear the subtle whispers of our intuition, the gentle guidance of our inner wisdom. This practice is vital, not just for spiritual growth, but for daily well-being. It allows our nervous system to settle, our thoughts to untangle, and our bodies to release tension. As you prepare to settle into your night's rest, invite this profound silence into your space. Let go of the need to think, to plan, to analyze. Just listen. Listen to the gentle rhythm of your own breath. Listen to the subtle sounds around you, the distant hum of traffic, the soft creak of your bed, the gentle whisper of the night. Do not judge these sounds, simply observe them. And in doing so, you create a vast open space within your mind, a space where true peace can reside, and where the deepest, most restorative sleep can naturally unfold. It's like clearing the static from a radio so you can finally hear the clear, calming melody. We've learned the peace found in silence, allowing us to truly taste the present moment. Now let's shift our focus to the quiet, persistent effort required for inner transformation, much like tending a garden. This brings us to the gardener's patience, a reflection on cultivating inner growth and allowing wisdom to blossom at its own pace without force or hurried expectation. In a remote mountain village, there lived an old Zen master who in his youth had been a renowned gardener. His temple was famed not for its grand architecture, but for its exquisitely simple and serene garden. Visitors would marvel at the perfectly raked gravel, the carefully placed stones, and the vibrant yet understated plants that seemed to grow effortlessly. They would ask the master his secret, expecting some profound mystical technique. One day, a young monk, earnest and full of zeal, came to the master. This monk, named Akira, was eager to achieve enlightenment swiftly. He meditated for long hours, studied scriptures intensely, and practiced austerities with fierce determination. Yet despite his efforts, he often felt frustrated, believing his progress was too slow, his mind still too chaotic. He saw the master's serene garden and thought, if only I could cultivate my mind with such perfection, enlightenment would surely be mine. Akira approached the master as he was meticulously weeding a patch of moss. Master Akira began, his voice tinged with impatience. I strive endlessly for spiritual insight, yet it eludes me. My mind is a wilderness of weeds, and my efforts seem to bear little fruit. How do you cultivate such a perfect garden? What is your secret for growing wisdom so quickly? The master, without looking up, continued to gently pull a tiny weed, carefully shaking the soil from its roots. Akira, he said softly, there is no quickly in gardening, nor in cultivating the spirit. The secret, if there is one, lies not in force but in patience and understanding the nature of growth. He finally looked up, his eyes twinkling. When you plant a seed, do you dig it up every day to see if it has sprouted? Do you shout at it to grow faster? Do you curse the soil if the first sprout doesn't appear overnight? Akira chuckled nervously. Of course not, master. That would be foolish. It would damage the seed and prevent it from growing at all. And yet the master continued, turning back to his weeding. You treat your own mind in precisely this way. You plant the seeds of meditation and study, but then you constantly dig them up with self-doubt, impatience, and the expectation of immediate results. You curse your weeds, your distracting thoughts and emotions, instead of observing them and gently removing them, just as I remove this weed root by root. The master then explained his gardening philosophy. A gardener does not create growth, he creates the conditions for growth. He prepares the soil, provides water and sunlight, and removes obstacles like weeds. But the growth itself comes from within the seed in its own time. Some plants bloom in spring, others in summer, some take years to mature. Each has its own rhythm. Similarly, in cultivating your mind, you prepare the soil of your awareness through meditation. You water it with mindful attention. You provide the sunlight of compassionate understanding, and you gently remove the weeds of attachment, judgment, and expectation. But the wisdom itself, the true insight, will blossom from within you at its own natural pace. You cannot force a flower to open before its time, nor can you force enlightenment. He gestured around the serene garden. This garden is not perfect, because I forced it to be. It is perfect because I allowed it to be. I paid attention. I was consistent. I celebrated the smallest sprout and understood that even a withered leaf has its place in the cycle. The beauty comes from accepting the natural process, the continuous gentle effort, and the unwavering faith that growth will occur in its own perfect timing. Akira looked around the garden with new eyes. He saw the subtle imperfections, the slightly irregular lines in the gravel, a single leaf fallen from a branch. But these didn't detract from its beauty. They enhanced its authenticity, its living quality. He began to understand that his relentless striving was itself a form of resistance to the natural unfolding of his own being. He was fighting against the very process that would bring him peace. From that day forward, Akira's practice changed. He still meditated, he still studied, but his frantic energy was replaced by a quiet diligence. When his mind became restless, he no longer fought it. He observed it like a gardener, observing a stubborn weed, and gently pulled away his attachment to it. He began to appreciate the small moments of clarity, the fleeting glimpses of peace, recognizing them as sprouts of wisdom. He learned to trust the process to nurture his inner garden with patience and persistent, gentle effort. And slowly, naturally, his wilderness of a mind began to transform into a place of profound tranquility. This story, The Gardener's Patience, holds a profound message for anyone seeking peace in a world that demands instant gratification. We are often told that if we just work hard enough or try hard enough, we will achieve our desired outcomes. But Zen teaches us that true growth, especially inner growth, cannot be rushed. It requires a gentle, consistent effort, a deep trust in the process, and an unwavering patience with ourselves. Think of how often we become frustrated with our own minds judging ourselves for not being enlightened enough or calm enough. This impatience is itself a form of clinging a resistance to the natural unfolding of our experience. Just as you wouldn't expect a seed to become a mighty tree overnight, don't expect your mind to achieve perfect tranquility instantly. As you prepare for rest, remember the gardener. You are cultivating your inner peace. Provide the right conditions, quiet space, conscious breathing, the release of worries. But then let go of the expectation of immediate perfection. Trust that the seeds of calm and wisdom you are planting will grow in their own time. This gentle approach fosters a sense of inner safety and acceptance, allowing your mind and body to relax more deeply, guiding you naturally into the restorative embrace of profound sleep. We've learned from the gardener's patience that true growth unfolds at its own pace. Now let's explore a concept that often feels counterintuitive in our striving world, yet offers immense liberation: the illusion of control. This section delves into the wisdom of surrender and the profound freedom that comes from releasing the need to manage everything, allowing life to flow more naturally. In a village perched precariously on a hillside, there lived a renowned potter named Sato. Sato was a master craftsman famous for the exquisite vases and bowls he created. His hands were nimble, his touch precise, and he took immense pride in his ability to perfectly shape the clay. Yet Sato was a man consumed by the need for control. He obsessed over every detail of his work, from the exact consistency of the clay to the precise temperature of the kiln. He believed that only through absolute control could he produce perfection. He rarely delegated, fearing that others would ruin his vision. One day, Sato decided to create his masterpiece, a monumental vase so delicate and perfectly balanced that it would be unlike anything seen before. He spent weeks preparing the clay, hours upon hours at the wheel, meticulously shaping the form. He worked tirelessly, pushing himself to the brink of exhaustion, convinced that any deviation, any accidental imperfection, would shatter his dream. He would often rework a piece, endlessly unable to let go of a perceived flaw. As the vase neared completion, just before firing, a sudden unexpected earthquake, though minor, shook the village. Sato's workshop trembled, and a tiny, almost imperceptible crack appeared near the base of his magnificent vase. Sato was devastated. He cried out in despair, his masterpiece ruined, his months of relentless effort seemingly wasted by a force beyond his control. He stared at the crack, filled with rage and frustration, unable to accept this flaw. His elderly neighbor, an old woman named Hana, who often visited his workshop to simply observe his meticulous work, approached him. Hana had seen many seasons come and go, and her wisdom was deep and quiet. She picked up a smaller finished pot that Sato considered imperfect because it had a slight asymmetry. Sato, Hana said softly, her voice calm amidst his distress, "You strive for absolute control, for a perfection that exists only in your mind. But life, like the clay, has its own will. The earthquake, the wind, the very heat of the kiln, these are forces you cannot command." She gently traced the tiny crack on his ruined masterpiece. "This crack, Sato, is not a flaw. It is a mark of its journey. It tells the story of the earth's tremor, a testament to the raw, untamed forces that are parts of creation itself. By fighting it, by refusing to accept it, you deny the very life that shaped it." Sato scoffed, "But it is imperfect. It is not what I envisioned." Hana smiled. "Perhaps your vision was too narrow. A true master does not merely impose his will upon the clay. He dances with it. He understands its nature, its limits, and its surprising gifts. Sometimes the most beautiful pieces emerge not from rigid control, but from a willingness to surrender to the unpredictable, to embrace the imperfections that arise." She pointed to the slightly asymmetric pot in her hand. "This pot, which you deem imperfect, has a unique character. It tells a story. It breathes. The slight irregularity makes it interesting, alive. The very striving for absolute control, Sato, often leads to a rigidity that stifles true beauty and prevents unexpected marvels." Hana then shared a story of her own garden. "I used to try and force every plant to grow exactly as I wished, arranging every leaf, every branch. But then I learned to let go. I still tend, I still care, but I allow the plants to grow in their own way, to lean towards the sun, to intertwine naturally. And my garden blossomed with a wild organic beauty I could never have planned or controlled." Sato listened, his anger slowly giving way to a quiet contemplation. He looked at the cracked vase no longer with fury, but with a new sense of curiosity. He realized that his relentless pursuit of control had made him rigid, anxious, and ultimately unable to appreciate the natural unfolding of events. His fear of imperfection had blinded him to the unique character that might arise from an unexpected turn. He understood that true mastery wasn't about wielding absolute power, but about a profound acceptance of what is, and a flexible responsiveness to life's inevitable twists. From that day forward, Sato's approach to his craft and to his life began to change. He still worked with immense skill and dedication, but he began to embrace the unexpected. When a slight warp occurred in the kiln, instead of discarding the piece, he would find a way to incorporate it to make it a unique feature. He started experimenting more, allowing the clay to guide him rather than forcing it into his preconceived notions. He found that by releasing his tight grip on control, his creativity blossomed, and his work, though perhaps less perfect by his old standards, became infinitely more alive and soulful. His anxiety lessened, replaced by a joyful adaptability. This story, The Potter and the Earthquake, powerfully illustrates the illusion of control. In our modern lives, we often feel the immense pressure to control every aspect: our careers, our relationships, our bodies, and especially our outcomes. We plan, we strategize, we micromanage, and when things inevitably deviate from our carefully constructed plans, we feel immense frustration, anger, or despair. This constant striving for control is exhausting and ultimately futile because life is inherently unpredictable. Zen teaches us that while we can influence things, we cannot truly control them. True peace comes from a radical surrender, not a surrender of effort, but a surrender of attachment to outcome. It's about doing your best with intention and presence, and then allowing life to unfold as it will. This doesn't mean being passive. It means being adaptable and resilient. It means trusting that even in unexpected cracks and imperfections, there can be a unique beauty and a valuable lesson. As you prepare for sleep, consider what you might be trying too hard to control. Are you replaying the day's events, wishing you had acted differently? Are you worrying about tomorrow's tasks, trying to mentally prepare for every possible scenario? These attempts to control the past or the future only serve to keep your mind active and agitated. Instead, practice gentle surrender. Do your best in the present moment, and then release your grip on the outcome. Trust that you can handle whatever arises. This act of letting go of control allows your mind to quiet your body, to relax, and the natural flow of deep restorative sleep to envelop you unhindered by the restless striving of the ego. We've learned the liberating power of releasing our need for control, finding freedom in surrender. Now let's explore a core Zen principle that helps us navigate the complexities of life without falling into extremes, the path of the middle way. This section teaches us to find balance in the present moment, avoiding the pitfalls of rigid adherence to one side or another. In a village nestled between a scorching desert and a treacherous, icy mountain range lived a community that struggled with extremes. Some villagers, convinced that true spiritual insight lay in severe asceticism, would venture into the desert, enduring thirst and hunger for days. Others, believing enlightenment was found through ecstatic indulgence, would retreat to the mountains for lavish feasts and endless celebrations. Both groups, in their own way, suffered. The desert dwellers returned gaunt and weak, their spirits often brittle. The revelers, though initially joyful, often found themselves riddled with regret and physical ailments, their peace fleeting. Among them lived a quiet, unassuming tailor named Kaito. Kaito was known for his balanced temperament and the perfectly fitting garments he crafted. He never joined the desert ascetics nor the mountain revelers. Instead, he simply went about his daily life, observing the wisdom of the village's oldest, most revered Zen master, who also practiced a path of moderation. One day, the village elder, concerned by the villagers' suffering, approached Kaito. Kaito, he said, you seem to walk a different path. You are neither wasted by hunger nor dulled by excess. What is your secret? How do you find such peace amidst our village's extremes? Kaito, carefully threading a needle, looked up. Elder, I simply follow the teaching of the middle way. It is not about avoiding pleasure or pain, but about recognizing that balance is where true well-being resides. He continued, think of a lute string. If it is too tight, it will snap. If it is too loose, it will produce no sound at all. But if it is tuned just right, it sings beautifully. He then explained the desert dwellers believe suffering purifies the soul, but starvation only weakens the body and agitates the mind, making clear thought impossible. The mountain revelers believe pleasure brings happiness, but endless indulgence dulls the senses and leads to a longing for ever greater stimulation, leaving them empty. The middle way is like tailoring a garment. If I cut too much fabric, it is wasted. If I cut too little, the garment is too tight and cannot be worn. The art lies in finding the exact measure, the perfect balance that allows for comfort and function. It means not clinging to extremes. When joy arises, experience it fully, but do not cling to it as if it will last forever, for that leads to suffering when it inevitably passes. When sorrow arises, acknowledge it, feel it, but do not drown in it, for that also blinds you to the possibilities of healing and change. It is about understanding that true life is found in the fluid space between these two poles. Kaito further elaborated, in our daily lives, this means finding a balance between effort and rest, between speaking and listening, between self-care and caring for others. It means not being overly attached to success, nor overly crushed by failure. It is a path of dynamic equilibrium, constantly adjusting like balancing on a log in a flowing stream. The elder listened, his face thoughtful. He understood that the villagers, in their fervent pursuit of one extreme or another, were missing the very essence of true living. They were like the lute strings, either snapped or silent, never finding their song. From that day on, the elder began to teach Kaito's simple analogy to the villagers. Some initially scoffed, still convinced that their extreme paths were the only way to profound insight. But slowly, gradually, a few began to try Kaito's way. They started to find a balance in their daily routines, in their eating habits, and in their emotional responses. They learned that a quiet walk, rather than a desert ordeal, could bring clarity, and a shared moderate meal, rather than a lavish banquet, could bring genuine contentment. They found that their peace was not dependent on external circumstances, but on the inner balance they cultivated. This concept, the path of the middle way, is one of the most practical and profound teachings in Zen. In a world that often pulls us towards extremes, extreme productivity, extreme relaxation, extreme opinions, it invites us to find harmony and balance. It's about recognizing that both indulgence and asceticism can be forms of attachment, and that true freedom lies in the space between. Think about how often you swing between extremes in your own life. Perhaps you work relentlessly until you burn out, then crash into days of inactivity. Or you try to eliminate all difficult emotions only to find them bubbling up more intensely. The middle way encourages a gentle, compassionate approach, acknowledging the reality of your situation, embracing both the light and the shadow, and seeking a balanced, sustainable path forward. As you prepare for sleep, consider how you might apply the middle way. Instead of striving for perfect sleep or complete eradication of thoughts, aim for a balanced approach. Acknowledge any lingering thoughts or worries, but don't engage in a mental battle with them. Find the middle ground between trying too hard to fall asleep and giving up entirely. Gently guide your mind towards a state of soft relaxation, understanding that rest is not an extreme destination, but a natural state that arises from cultivating balance. This thoughtful approach can lead you directly into a deeply restorative and peaceful night. We've navigated the middle way, finding balance between extremes. Now let's rediscover a fundamental aspect of human experience that is often overshadowed by our serious pursuits and endless striving: the simple joy of laughter. This section explores the echo of laughter, rediscovering the lightness that comes from a playful spirit and finding joy in the everyday simplicity of life. In a bustling town where everyone seemed to be perpetually busy, striving for wealth status or spiritual enlightenment, there lived an old Zen master known not for his austere wisdom, but for his infectious, booming laugh. He didn't live in a secluded temple. He wandered the streets, visited markets, and often sat by the town well simply observing. While others pursued grand goals, the master seemed content with the smallest, most ordinary moments, and often he would burst into spontaneous laughter at something only he seemed to perceive. The townspeople, though respectful, were often puzzled by him. They sought profound teachings, intricate philosophies, and rigorous practices. They would approach him burdened by their worries, asking for guidance on how to overcome suffering, achieve enlightenment, or succeed in their endeavors. One particularly stressed merchant, wealthy but perpetually anxious about his business, approached the master. "Master," he sighed, his face a mask of worry lines, "I am filled with burdens. My competitors are ruthless, my profits are low, and my mind is a constant whirl of calculations and fears. How can I find peace? What deep truth can you offer to alleviate my suffering?" The master looked at the merchant, his eyes crinkling at the corners, and then without a word, he began to laugh. It wasn't a mocking laugh, but a deep, resonant, joyous sound that seemed to bubble up from his very core. He laughed until tears streamed down his face, holding his belly. The merchant, initially offended, found himself inexplicably smiling, then chuckling, and finally bursting into laughter himself, though he had no idea why. The sheer absurdity of the situation, the master's unbridled joy, was contagious. When their laughter finally subsided, leaving both of them breathless but surprisingly light, the merchant wiped his eyes. "Master," he said, still smiling, "why did you laugh?" The master took a deep breath, still radiating amusement. "Because, my friends, you are trying to find peace in a ledger book. You are trying to find joy in a pile of gold, and you carry your burdens as if they are the most precious treasures in the world." He then picked up a small, smooth pebble from the ground. This pebble, it simply is. It does not worry about being more or less than another pebble. It does not strive to become a mountain. It simply exists. And in its simplicity, there is a profound truth that you, with all your striving, are missing. The deepest truth, the master continued, his voice still touched with mirth, is that life is already happening right now. It is unfolding in the simple act of breathing, in the warmth of the sun, in the taste of water, in the sound of a child's voice. We get so caught up in what ifs and if onlys in chasing after grand experiences that we miss the profound joy hidden in the ordinary, in the mundane, in the simplicity of just being. And sometimes the only way to see this truth is to loosen your grip, to lighten your heart, and to simply laugh. He patted the merchant on the shoulder. Your burdens, my friend, are often heavier because you choose to carry them so seriously. Imagine your worries are not weighty stones but fluffy clouds. You can watch them drift by, and sometimes you can even find humor in their shapes. The true freedom is not in having no burdens, but in learning to carry them lightly sometimes, even with a laugh. The merchant walked away, not with a profound philosophical answer, but with a lingering sense of lightness. The master hadn't told him how to solve his business problems, but he had given him something far more valuable, a reminder to not take himself or his troubles so seriously. Over the next few weeks, the merchant found himself chuckling at minor setbacks, smiling at small victories, and occasionally bursting into spontaneous laughter at the sheer absurdity of life's daily dramas. His business didn't magically transform, but his experience of it did. He became less anxious, more adaptable, and surprisingly more effective. This story, The Echo of Laughter, reminds us of the power of lightness and playfulness in our spiritual journey. Zen is not always about solemnity and deep contemplation. It also embraces the profound wisdom found in humor, absurdity, and the simple joy of being alive. In a world that often demands seriousness and constant striving, we forget that laughter is a powerful release, a way to dissolve tension and reframe our perspective. Think about how a good laugh can instantly shift your mood, dissolving stress and bringing a sense of expansiveness. It connects us to our shared humanity and reminds us that much of what we worry about can, with a slight shift in perspective, be seen as less daunting, even amusing. As you prepare for sleep, consider how you can invite more lightness into your evening. Release the heavy cloak of seriousness. Perhaps recall a moment that made you genuinely smile or laugh today. Allow yourself to feel the subtle warmth that laughter leaves behind. By letting go of rigidity and embracing a more playful, less serious approach to your thoughts and feelings, you create a soft, open space in your mind. This lightness allows your body and mind to truly relax, facilitating a deep, peaceful sleep that is unburdened by the weighty concerns of the day. We've embraced the lightness that comes with laughter, finding joy in simplicity. Now let's consider another powerful aspect of Zen wisdom, the art of imperfect acceptance. This section explores how embracing our flaws and the imperfections of life can become stepping stones to deeper understanding and profound peace, rather than sources of endless frustration. In a village nestled by a tranquil lake lived a master calligrapher named Hiroki. He was celebrated far and wide for his magnificent brushstrokes, which seemed to capture the very essence of nature. Yet Hiroki was a relentless perfectionist. He would spend hours, sometimes days, on a single stroke, discarding hundreds of attempts if they didn't meet his impossibly high standards. He believed that true beauty lay only in flawless execution, and he held himself and his work to an unbending ideal. He often felt a deep dissatisfaction, even after completing what others considered masterpieces, because he could always find a tiny blemish, a subtle imperfection. One morning, a young apprentice eager to learn from the master came to observe him. The apprentice watched as Hiroki meticulously prepared his ink, then with intense concentration began to paint a single bamboo stalk. He executed the first stroke with breathtaking precision, then the second and the third. But as he lifted his brush for the final delicate leaf, his hand trembled ever so slightly, creating a faint, almost imperceptible smudge on the parchment. Hiroki let out a groan of frustration. He crumpled the paper, a perfect near masterpiece, and threw it into a pile of discarded attempts. Ruined, he muttered, his face contorted in disappointment. A blemish, it is not perfect. The apprentice, emboldened by youthful curiosity, carefully retrieved the crumpled paper. He smoothed it out and looked at the smudge. To his eyes, it was barely noticeable, and the overall painting was still extraordinarily beautiful. Master, the apprentice ventured softly, this painting. It is still magnificent. Does this small mark truly ruin it? Hiroki scowled. Of course, a true masterpiece must be without flaws. It must be perfect. At that moment, the temple's old Zen master, who had been quietly tending to the moss garden nearby, approached them. He picked up the discarded scroll and looked at the smudge, then at the distressed calligrapher. Hiroki, the old master, said, his voice calm and clear. Your pursuit of perfection blinds you to a deeper truth. Do you find perfect symmetry in the trees outside? Is every leaf identical? Does the moon always present a flawless circle in the sky? Hiroki paused, considering. No, master. Nature is full of variation. And yet the old master continued, is it not beautiful? Is the gnarled branch of an ancient oak tree less majestic because it is not perfectly straight? Is a perfectly formed pebble more beautiful than one shaped by the unique currents of a river? He pointed to the smudge on Hiroki's painting. This mark, Hiroki, is not a flaw. It is a whisper of life. It is evidence that a human hand, not a lifeless machine, created this. It gives the painting character a story. It invites the viewer to look closer to connect with the subtle reality of its creation. True beauty, Hiroki, often lies not in perfection, but in the acceptance of imperfection. The old master then spoke of the ancient art of kintsugi, where broken pottery is repaired with gold lacquer, making the cracks not invisible, but highlighted. The cracks become part of its history, part of its unique beauty, making the piece even more valuable than before it was broken. It accepts its history, its imperfections, and in doing so, finds a new form of beauty. Your constant striving for flawlessness, the master concluded, creates tension in your spirit, just as it makes your hand tremble. It prevents you from truly enjoying the process, and it denies the inherent beauty that arises when you embrace things as they are, including yourself. When you embrace imperfection, you free yourself from the burden of an impossible ideal. Hiroki looked at the smudge again, and for the first time he saw it differently. He saw not a mistake, but a subtle uniqueness, a testament to the moment of creation, a signature of the human touch. He realized that his relentless pursuit of an unattainable ideal had stolen his joy and filled him with perpetual dissatisfaction. By refusing to accept any flaw, he was rejecting the very essence of life's organic, unpredictable nature. From that day forward, Hiroki's calligraphy, while still masterful, began to change. He still strove for excellence, but he also embraced the occasional tremor, the subtle ink bleed the spontaneous character that sometimes emerged. His work, now infused with a newfound freedom, became even more vibrant and alive, resonating with a deeper, more authentic beauty. And more importantly, his own spirit found a profound sense of peace. This powerful story, The Art of Imperfect Acceptance, challenges our modern obsession with flawlessness and filtered realities. We are constantly bombarded with images of perfection, leading us to believe that our lives, our bodies, our relationships, and even our spiritual journeys must be without blemish. This creates immense pressure and deep dissatisfaction. Zen teaches us that true peace and profound self acceptance comes not from achieving an impossible perfection, but from embracing our own imperfections and those of the world around us. It's about understanding that life in its very essence is messy, unpredictable, and full of beautiful smudges. When we resist these imperfections, we create suffering. When we accept them, we find liberation. As you prepare for sleep, consider any thoughts or feelings of inadequacy, any perceived flaws you might be holding on to from your day or even from your life. Instead of fighting them or wishing them away, practice imperfect acceptance. Acknowledge them gently, just as Hiroki learned to acknowledge the smudge. See them not as failures, but as unique aspects of your human journey. This compassionate self acceptance releases the tension in your mind and body, allowing you to settle into a state of profound peace and self love, guiding you effortlessly into a deep and restorative sleep. You are already perfect in your beautiful imperfection. We've learned the wisdom of embracing imperfection, finding beauty in what is rather than what we believe should be. Now let's explore a concept that might seem utterly baffling at first, yet holds the key to breaking free from rigid thinking, the gate of no gate. This section invites us to confront our preconceived notions and open ourselves to new possibilities that exist beyond the confines of our logical minds. In ancient times, there was a renowned Zen monastery known for its unique entrance, not a grand gate nor a hidden path, but simply a wide open archway that everyone called the Gate of No Gate. It was said that only those who truly understood its meaning could pass through and gain true insight. Many seekers came, but most stood before it confused, unable to comprehend its paradox. They would walk around it, looking for a hidden latch, a secret button, or a mystical incantation. They would intellectualize, argue, and theorize, but few ever truly entered. Among these seekers was a brilliant scholar named Kenzo. Kenzo was highly intelligent, possessing a sharp mind and an encyclopedic knowledge of Buddhist scriptures. He believed that every problem had a logical solution, and every truth could be understood through careful study and rational thought. He arrived at the monastery confident that his intellect would surely unlock the mystery of the Gate of No Gate. He spent days observing, analyzing, and meditating before the archway. He read every commentary ever written about it, debated its meaning with other baffled scholars, and even drew intricate diagrams trying to deduce its hidden mechanism. He tried walking through it backward, hopping on one foot, even crawling. He tried to think of it as a metaphor, a symbol, a riddle to be solved, but each attempt left him more frustrated and no closer to understanding. The gate remained stubbornly just an open archway. One evening, exhausted and defeated, Kenzo slumped against a tree near the gate. A simple, unlettered peasant woman who had been selling vegetables nearby saw his distress. She had often passed through the gate herself without a second thought on her way to the market. "What troubles you, scholar?" she asked, gently noticing his furrowed brow. Kenzo, exasperated, gestured at the archway. "This gate of no gate. It is a paradox, a contradiction. How can one pass through a gate that is not a gate? There must be a secret, a profound intellectual truth I am missing." The woman smiled a simple, untroubled smile. "But, scholar," she said, "it is a gate. You are looking for something complex when it is simply what it appears to be. It is a gate because it marks a transition, a boundary between outside and inside. And it is no gate because there is nothing to open, nothing to unlock, no obstruction. You simply walk through it." Kenzo stared at her dumbfounded. "But it cannot be that simple. There must be a deeper meaning, a hidden teaching." The woman chuckled softly. "The deepest meaning, scholar, is often hidden not in complexity, but in simplicity. Your mind is so full of what it expects a gate to be, what it expects truth to be, that you cannot see what is plainly before you. You are trying to solve a problem that does not exist." She continued, "You seek to understand it with your intellect, to grasp it with your mind. But some truths are not grasped, they are experienced. You are waiting for permission to enter a space that is already open. You are trying to break down a barrier that is not there. The gate of no gate," she explained, "is a koan, a riddle, designed not to be solved by the intellect, but to break the intellect's grip. It shows you that sometimes the biggest obstacle is your own mind, your own preconceptions, your own need to categorize and control. When you let go of your idea of what a gate should be, you realize it already is what it is, and then you simply walk through." Kenzo, who had spent his life accumulating knowledge, suddenly felt a profound shift. He had been looking for a lock when there was no door. He had been seeking a key when the gate was already open. His intellect, which he had considered his greatest asset, had been his greatest impediment. He realized that true understanding often lies beyond logical constructs, in a space of pure acceptance and intuitive knowing. He stood up, took a deep breath, and without another thought, simply walked through the archway. He found himself on the other side, nothing changed, yet everything transformed. The physical gate was the same, but his perception of it had changed entirely. He realized that the gate of no gate was not about a specific object, but about breaking free from the mental prisons we construct for ourselves. It was about allowing ourselves to see reality as it truly is, rather than how we believe it should be. This powerful story, The Gate of No Gate, challenges our reliance on purely intellectual understanding. In our modern world, we are trained to analyze, to question, to find logical explanations for everything. While valuable, this approach can sometimes limit us, preventing us from seeing simple truths that defy conventional logic. We create mental gates, beliefs, expectations, and preconceived notions that prevent us from experiencing the world openly. Zen encourages us to step beyond these self-imposed barriers. It asks us to question our assumptions, to loosen the grip of our logical minds, and to be open to paradox and simplicity. This isn't about being illogical. It's about recognizing that some truths are not arrived at through linear thought, but through direct, unmediated experience. As you prepare for sleep, consider any mental gates you might be standing before. Are you clinging to old beliefs that keep you stuck? Are you overthinking a simple situation, trying to find a complex solution where none is needed? Practice letting go of the need for absolute intellectual comprehension. Allow yourself to be open to the possibility that some things are simply to be experienced, not explained. When you release the need to understand everything, your mind softens, your internal barriers dissolve, and you can simply be effortlessly drifting into a state of profound peace and deeply restorative sleep. You simply walk through the open gate. We've learned to release the illusion of control and walk through the gate of no gate, embracing simplicity over intellectual complexity. Now let's bring our awareness to the most fundamental and immediate anchor we possess, our breath. This section explores the gift of the present breath, teaching us how anchoring ourselves in the now through mindful breathing can calm our minds and profoundly affect our state of being. In a bustling city filled with the incessant clamor of carts, merchants, and hurried footsteps, lived a young man named Hiroto. Hiroto was a scholar, constantly absorbed in his thoughts, always planning, worrying, or replaying past conversations. His mind was like a whirlwind, and he rarely felt truly present. Even when eating, he would think of his next task. When walking, he would be mentally composing letters. Consequently, he was often anxious, prone to headaches, and found sleep an elusive friend. He yearned for peace, but it always seemed just beyond his grasp, somewhere in the future or past. One sweltering afternoon, Hiroto was walking through the crowded market, his mind a frantic mess of deadlines and obligations. He accidentally bumped into an old Zen master who was sitting quietly by a stall, seemingly just observing the chaos around him with a serene smile. Hiroto, flustered, began to apologize profusely, his words tumbling out in a rush. The master gently raised a hand. "Young man," he said, his voice a calm island in the sea of noise, "slow down. You move as if pursued by 1,000 demons, yet they are all within your own head." Hiroto, surprised by the master's directness, paused. "But master," he began, "my mind is constantly racing. I have so much to do, so many worries. How can one find peace in such a world when thoughts never cease?" The master simply took a slow, deliberate breath, inhaling deeply and then exhaling with a soft sigh. He then looked at Hiroto. "You are constantly seeking peace somewhere outside yourself, in the future when tasks are done, or in the past when problems were different. But peace, young man, is always here now. It resides in the present breath." He continued, "Your breath is an anchor, always in the present moment. It does not carry the burdens of yesterday, nor the anxieties of tomorrow. It simply is. When your mind races, when you feel overwhelmed, return to your breath. Feel the cool air entering your nostrils, the gentle rise of your chest, the warm air leaving your body. Observe it without judgment, without trying to change it. Just be with it. When you focus on the breath, the master explained, you are not fighting your thoughts. You are simply shifting your attention. It's like trying to watch a busy street and then deciding to look at a single flower in a window instead. The street is still busy, but your focus is elsewhere. The thoughts are still there, but they no longer consume you. Hiroto tried it. He took a deep breath, consciously feeling the air fill his lungs. He noticed for the first time in hours the subtle sensations in his body. He felt the tension in his shoulders begin to ease, the frantic energy in his mind start to dissipate. It wasn't an instant eradication of all thought, but a remarkable shift. The whirlwind slowed to a gentle breeze. "It is so simple," Hiroto whispered, amazed, "and yet so profound," the master replied. "The simplicity is its power. In every breath, you have an opportunity to return to the present moment, to release the grip of past and future, and to find the stillness that is always within you." This stillness is not an absence of activity, but an absence of inner turmoil. It is the peace that allows you to engage with life more fully and to truly rest when the time comes. From that day forward, Hiroto began to practice mindful breathing throughout his day. When anxiety tightened its grip, he would pause, take a few conscious breaths, and return his focus to the rise and fall of his chest. He still had responsibilities, and thoughts still arose, but he no longer felt overwhelmed by them. He found that by anchoring himself in the present breath, he could approach his tasks with greater clarity and a newfound sense of calm. His headaches lessened, and more importantly, sleep, once a distant dream, became a natural, peaceful descent into deep rest. This teaching the gift of the present breath is perhaps the most accessible and immediate Zen practice we can adopt. In a world that constantly pulls our attention outward, our breath is an ever present reminder to come back home to the stillness within. It is a physiological anchor that directly influences our nervous system. Deep conscious breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, signaling to our bodies that it is safe to relax, to rest, to let go. You don't need a meditation cushion or a quiet room to practice this. You can do it anywhere, anytime. When you feel stress rising, when your mind begins to race, simply bring your awareness to your breath. Don't try to force it, just notice it. Feel the subtle sensations of inhalation and exhalation. It is a powerful, immediate pathway to calm. As you prepare for sleep, make your breath your gentle companion. Lie down comfortably and without trying to change anything. Simply observe the natural rhythm of your breathing. Feel the gentle rise and fall of your belly or chest. Let each exhale be a soft release of any lingering tension. As your focus remains on this quiet, rhythmic dance, your mind will naturally slow, your body will relax, and you will effortlessly drift into the deep, restorative sleep you truly deserve. The present breath is not just a gift, it is your gateway to profound tranquility. We've anchored ourselves in the present moment through the gift of the breath, recognizing its profound, calming power. Now let's explore how even the most mundane activities, the everyday chores we often rush through or resent, can become opportunities for deep awareness and presence. This brings us to the Zen of everyday chores, discovering how to transform routine tasks into moments of profound mindfulness and spiritual practice. In a small, bustling Zen monastery nestled among rolling hills, the schedule was rigorous. Monks spent their days in meditation study and prayer, but also in an endless cycle of chores, sweeping courtyards, washing dishes, chopping wood, and tending the gardens. These tasks were often perceived by new novices as distractions from their real spiritual work. One particularly ambitious and intellectually inclined novice named Eijiro found these chores incredibly tiresome. He saw them as beneath him, a waste of his valuable time that could be better spent contemplating scriptures or meditating. He would sweep the courtyard quickly, his mind already on the next task, his movements jerky and hurried. He would wash dishes with a grimace, thinking of the profound koans he could be unraveling. His internal resistance made every chore feel like a heavy burden, and he often felt exhausted and frustrated even after a day of seemingly simple tasks. The head monk, an old man with incredibly bright eyes and a perpetually serene expression, observed Eijiro's hurried movements and subtle agitation. He saw that Eijiro was physically present, but mentally absent, missing the very essence of Zen. One morning, the head monk asked Eijiro to prepare tea for a visiting dignitary. Eijiro, seeing this as a minor task, rushed through it, boiling the water too quickly and pouring the tea carelessly. When the dignitary received the tea, it was lukewarm and somewhat bitter. The dignitary politely drank it, but the head monk noticed. Later that day, the head monk called Eijiro. Eijiro, he said gently, when you prepare tea, what is its purpose? Eijiro somewhat defensively replied, to serve it, master, to quench thirst. And when you sweep the courtyard, what is its purpose? To clean it, master, to remove dirt. The head monk nodded slowly. And when you do these things, where is your mind? Eijiro hesitated. My mind, master, is usually contemplating the deeper truths or preparing for my next meditation. The head monk smiled. Eijiro, the deepest truths are not always found in scriptures or on the meditation cushion alone. They are found in the very act of living in the here and now. When you prepare tea, prepare only tea. Feel the warmth of the kettle, listen to the water boil, smell the fragrance of the leaves. Let your entire being be present in that one act. When you sweep the courtyard, sweep only the courtyard. Feel the broom in your hands, observe the dust gathering, hear the rhythmic swish of the bristles. Let your mind be as clear as the swept stones. You see these chores as obstacles to your spiritual growth, the head monk continued, but they are, in fact, the very path itself. They are opportunities for mindfulness in action. Every chore, no matter how small or mundane, is a chance to practice presence, to cultivate awareness, to bring your scattered mind back to this moment, to this breath, to this task. When you approach a chore with a hurried mind and a spirit of resistance, it becomes a burden. But when you approach it with full attention, with a sense of purpose and quiet dedication, it transforms. It becomes a form of meditation, a dance, a sacred act. The act of washing dishes becomes not just about cleaning, but about cleaning your mind. The act of sweeping becomes not just about removing dirt, but about clearing inner clutter. Eijiro listened, a profound realization dawning on him. He had been chasing enlightenment only to find it was hidden in the very tasks he despised. He thought of all the times he had rushed, neglecting the present moment, missing the simple beauty in his own actions. From that day forward, Eijiro's approach to his chores transformed. When he swept with intention, feeling the rhythmic flow of his body, observing the dust disappear. When he washed dishes, he did so with careful attention, noticing the warm water, the feel of the porcelain, the quiet gleam of the clean surface. He no longer rushed, he simply was with each task. And strangely, the chores, once a source of frustration, became a source of quiet joy and profound peace. He found that his mind, instead of being scattered, became focused and calm, extending the meditative state into every moment of his day. This story, the Zen of everyday chores, offers a powerful antidote to our modern tendency to compartmentalize life, separating work from play and spiritual practice from daily living. We often rush through routine tasks, seeing them as necessary evils to get to the good parts of life. But Zen teaches us that every moment holds the potential for awareness, for presence, for spiritual practice. Think about the chores you do every day: cooking, cleaning, commuting, organizing. How often are you truly present for them, rather than thinking of what's next or wishing you were doing something else? When we bring mindfulness to these routine actions, we transform them from drudgery into opportunities for practice. We cultivate a continuous awareness that carries over into all aspects of our lives, reducing stress and increasing our sense of calm. As you prepare for sleep, consider how you can bring this Zen of chores into your evening routine. As you brush your teeth, truly feel the brush, taste the paste. As you prepare your bed, feel the sheets smooth the pillows. As you dim the lights, notice the quiet descent of darkness. By engaging fully and mindfully with these simple everyday actions, you gently calm your nervous system, quiet your mind, and create a seamless transition into a state of profound relaxation, preparing your body and mind for the deepest, most restorative sleep. Every small act of presence builds towards a more peaceful existence. We've learned to find mindfulness in the smallest of actions, transforming chores into moments of presence. Now, as our journey through these uplifting Zen stories nears its gentle close, let's bring all these threads together into a final contemplation: the unfolding lotus. This section invites a reflection on the continuous journey of spiritual awakening, seeing ourselves as ever evolving beings, much like a lotus flower slowly opening its petals to the light. In a tranquil pond nestled deep within a hidden valley grew a single magnificent lotus flower. Unlike other flowers that bloom quickly and then wither, this lotus seemed to unfold with an almost imperceptible slowness, its petals gradually revealing their intricate beauty day by day. Many travelers would stop by the pond, marveling at its serene presence. Some would wish for it to open faster, impatient to see its full glory. Others would lament its temporary nature, saddened by the thought that it would eventually fade. One day, a weary seeker who had traveled far and wide in search of ultimate truth arrived at the pond. He had studied countless scriptures, practiced rigorous meditations, and debated with many masters. Yet he still felt a deep incompleteness, a yearning for a final, definitive answer, a sudden blinding flash of enlightenment that would make everything clear. He sat by the pond, watching the lotus, feeling his usual impatience rise. An old Zen nun, with eyes as calm as the pond itself, sat nearby observing the seeker. She had lived by this pond for decades, watching countless lotus flowers bloom and fade. "Young man," the nun said softly, "you seem troubled by the slowness of the lotus." The seeker sighed. "Yes, master. I seek ultimate understanding, a moment of profound awakening, but it always feels just out of reach. This lotus, too, seems to take forever to fully open. I wish it would just reveal its truth all at once." The nun smiled gently. "But its truth is in its unfolding, not just in its fully opened state. The lotus does not rush its growth. It does not worry about how many petals it has revealed, nor does it lament the ones still furled. It simply continues its journey, drawing nourishment from the muddy depths, reaching towards the light one petal at a time. She continued, "Your spiritual journey, like the lotus, is not about a sudden final destination. It is a continuous unfolding. There is no single moment of ultimate awakening that makes all else irrelevant. Rather, awakening is a series of gentle realizations, a gradual opening of your awareness, day by day, breath by breath. Each insight you gain, each moment of peace you find, is like another petal slowly unfurling. If you constantly yearn for the fully opened flower, you miss the profound beauty and wisdom in the process of its growth. You miss the courage it takes to push through the mud, the resilience to face the elements, the quiet determination to turn towards the sun. The mud, the water, the darkness, these are not obstacles, but essential parts of its being, just as your challenges and uncertainties are essential parts of your growth. The nun pointed to a tiny, tightly furled bud just beneath the water's surface. Even that bud, unseen by many, is already a lotus. Its potential is complete, even if its form is not yet fully expressed. In the same way, your innate wisdom, your capacity for peace, is already within you. The practice is simply to create the conditions for it to unfold naturally. The seeker looked from the fully formed lotus to the small bud, then back to the nun. He had always imagined enlightenment as a lightning bolt, a sudden, dramatic transformation. He realized now that he had been so focused on the end result that he had neglected the profound beauty and inherent wisdom in the journey itself. He had been resisting the very process of his own becoming. From that moment, the seeker's perspective shifted. He continued his practices, but with a newfound gentleness and acceptance. He no longer strained for a sudden breakthrough, but instead appreciated the small daily insights. He understood that every breath, every mindful step, every act of compassion was a gentle unfurling of his own inner lotus. He learned to trust the process, to embrace the gradual nature of his awakening, and to see himself as a being forever in the process of becoming, forever unfolding. This beautiful image of the unfolding lotus is a perfect metaphor for our continuous journey of spiritual awakening and self-discovery. In a world that often demands instant results and immediate transformations, Zen reminds us that true growth is organic, gradual, and infinitely patient. There isn't a final destination where all problems vanish. Instead, it's about learning to navigate life with increasing awareness, compassion, and peace, one gentle petal at a time. Each Zen story we've explored tonight, from the rustling willow leaves to the empty bowl, from the unseen thread to the middle way, from the taste of silence to the Zen of chores, has been a gentle nudge, a subtle unfurling of another aspect of your own innate wisdom. You are already whole, already complete, already the lotus. Your path is simply to continue shedding what no longer serves you, embracing what is, and allowing your inherent peace to blossom naturally. As you now prepare to conclude this shared journey and transition into the profound depths of sleep, remember the unfolding lotus. Know that your path to peace is not about striving, but about allowing. Allow your breath to deepen. Allow your thoughts to drift like clouds. Allow your body to soften. Trust in the natural process of release and renewal. Embrace the gentle, continuous unfolding of your own awareness, knowing that each moment of presence, each moment of surrender, is a petal opening, leading you further into a state of profound tranquility and truly restorative rest. And now, as the final stories gently settle into the quiet corners of your mind, feel the rhythm of your own breath begin to slow, becoming deeper, softer, almost imperceptible. Imagine the last remnants of any lingering thoughts, dissolving like mist, lifting in the morning sun, leaving behind a clear, spacious silence. Let the subtle images from our journey tonight, the graceful willow, the empty bowl, the flowing river, the patient gardener, the open gate drift into the background, merging into a comforting tapestry of peace. Allow your body to become heavy, sinking deeper into the warmth and stillness of your bed. There is nothing left to do, nowhere left to go, nothing left to hold on to. Just rest. Feel yourself gently letting go, surrendering completely to the profound calm that envelops you. May your sleep be deep, undisturbed, and truly restorative. Rest now, and we'll meet again soon.